Good morning. I'm Karen Jones, one of the worship associates here at UUFR, and I use she, her pronouns. Whether you are here in person or watching at home, it's good to be with you this morning. It's good for all of us to be together. As we gather together this morning, let me share with you words from Swami Vivekananda, an Indian Hindu monk, philosopher, and religious teacher. You have to grow from the inside out. None can teach you, none can make you spiritual. There is no other teacher but your own soul. Come, my friends, with our hearts open to build both the challenges and possibilities that this new day and new week bring. With our hearts open to all that inspires, sustains, redeems, and transforms us, come, let us worship together.
Today's special music is going to be a little different than it usually is. Usually it's just me singing, but today we're all going to try this together. I'm going to give you, it's going to be okay. I'm going to give you, it's going to be okay. And it's sort of like in a classroom where it's like, I didn't know I was going to have to do, it's okay. So I'm going to sing a short musical phrase, and you get to repeat that. I'm going to layer on another one, and you can choose to stay with the first one or the second one. I'm going to layer on a third one, and you can choose to sing that one with me or not. We're just going to repeat it until it sort of settles in, and then when you see me do this, we'll bring it to a close. Okay? Be here now. 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 Be here now.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you here in person please stand in body or spirit for our chalice lighting? If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with me at this time. Please join me in reciting the words on the screen. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing for our opening hymn. Our opening hymn this morning is number 168, One More Step. If you're visiting us for the first time this morning, I'd like to offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your own religious journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time in person, I invite you to stop by our welcome stand in the foyer if you have not already done so. If you're a return visitor, you can pick up a more permanent name tag there. If you're visiting us online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form at www.uufr.org/visitor form. If you do so, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter, The Chalice. I hope all of you will read through the chalice you received by email on Thursday about everything happening at UUFR. I would like to highlight a few things from this week's chalice. This is the final week to register for Spirit Fest, our fun multi-generational retreat over the Labor Day weekend. There's information about the weekend along with registration on the UUFR website. Friday, August 18th is the last day to sign up. Our in-person social hour this morning will be downstairs in Founders Hall following the service. This morning, also at 11:15, we will have a newcomer gathering in the music room just down the hall from the sanctuary. You can meet with Annie Wheelis, our Congregational Life Coordinator, to learn a little more about UUFR and UUism. I now invite you to meet and greet your neighbor. Thank you. And you can continue these conversations during social hour. Thank you. Feel free to continue the conversations during social hour. I was an elementary teacher. Don't make me bring out the elementary teacher voice to get everyone to pay attention. I'll start clapping and you can repeat the clap back to me. This is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We do this because we believe a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow shared is made easier to bear. Anyone is invited to share a joy or sorrow at joysandsorrows@uufr.org before 9 a.m. on Sunday. Anyone is also invited to light a candle before the service, and if they wish, fill out one of the cards so their joy and sorrow can be shared with the congregation. We share the joy of Chris and Holly Thomason, who welcomed their daughter Junie, born August 4th. The family is grateful and healthy and doing well. Sandy Heater, Wendy Cates Corbett, and their family share the joy for all who celebrated the life of David Heater yesterday at his memorial service. It was a beautiful tribute, and they are grateful for your love and support. As we hold these shared joys and sorrows in our hearts and reflect on the joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes in our own lives, let's be together in stillness and silence, opening ourselves to that spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names, but known to every human heart, that leads us to a fuller, deeper, richer experience of life. After the silence, we'll sing hymn 391, Voice Still and Small. But now, let's be together in stillness and silence.
Still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Quenching my tears through all the years, singing.
Everything we do at UUFR is only possible because of the generous financial support so many of you provide. If you would like to make a contribution this morning, we invite you to bring it forward and put it in one of our offering plates. You may also give using one of the methods on the screen. Now is the time for our offering. Please be generous. Both Reverend James and Reverend Sasha are away from UUFR this morning. Our guest speaker this morning is Rachel Wellons. Rachel is a former lawyer and at the moment a stay-at-home parent. She is a UUFR lay minister and happy to help whenever asked by UUFR. Who also needs glasses.
I was about to make the comment, as you get a little older, you need a little help. It can be irritating sometimes, but it's certainly much better than the alternative, right? For today's readings, we have a series of quotes I picked out that I thought might be appropriate for the message I'm going to deliver today. First, by Martin Luther King Jr., "We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love." By Maya Angelou, "It's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself to forgive. Forgive everybody." Mahatma Gandhi, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong." Pope John Paul II, "Forgiveness is above all a personal choice, a decision of the heart to go against natural instinct to pay back evil with evil." Again, Martin Luther King Jr., "Forgiveness does not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. It means rather that the evil act no longer remains as a barrier to the relationship. Forgiveness is a catalyst, creating the atmosphere necessary for a fresh start and a new beginning." By Desmond Tutu, "Forgiveness is not weak. It takes courage to face and overcome powerful emotions." Paul Louis Bursa, and I may not be pronouncing that last name right, "Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future." Christine Lakin, "When someone wrongs you, you don't forgive them for them. You forgive them for you." And finally, "Forgiveness is the final form of love." Reinhold Niebuhr.
This song has two complementary melodies. Join in as you feel comfortable, or feel free to just listen. First, I invite you to just feel the heartbeat of it. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Let go, let go, let go. Let go, let go, let go.
Thank you, Jean Marie, for leading us in song this morning. Although I suspect you're trying to recruit for the choir. And thank you all for being here. It's always great to be among you every Sunday. Someone this morning said, Rachel, break a leg. And to be honest, I'd prefer not. My son broke his arm last week, and he's fine. But we spent enough time in the ER, and I'd prefer not to go back. So with that being said, let's get into it, shall we? I look around, and I see a divided, angry nation. Cable news pundits say the United States has not been this divided since the American Civil War. Some even claim that the nation is now in a second cold civil war. Now, whether that's true or not, I can't say for certain, but I can tell you from my perspective, that feels about right. Opposing politicians haven't yet physically assaulted each other in the halls of Congress like they did in the 1850s before the original American Civil War broke out. But they verbally assault each other in the media almost daily. Vitriol flows from their mouths like water from a fire hose, and it comes straight into our homes via television, newspaper, and social media. And that anger and hostility at the other spreads like a contagion. We Unitarians are a gentle, angry people, or so our hymnal tells us. And I believe that's true, I really do. But I have to say, from a personal perspective, over the past years, I've found my anger at the world progressively waxing and my willingness to be gentle progressively waning. Now, perhaps I'm the only one here today who feels that way, but I somehow doubt it. People talk to me, and I listen, and I remember. People seem eager, if not anxious, to share their anger and frustrations with each other and about the world we inhabit, to vent in a safe space, to receive confirmation from their peers that their frustration and anger about life in 21st century America is justified and reciprocated. And why not, really? Most people, me included, want the validation of knowing their emotions and feelings and ideas are not only justified, but shared. It feels good to be told by your peers that your views are right. So that begs the question, why exactly is everyone so anxious and angry today? What's driving the discord in American society? I have some thoughts. I grew up in the 1970s and 1980s, believing in the progressive march of racial justice. In school, we learned about Martin Luther King, as they still do today, and we learned about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Racial segregation in schools and public life was officially a thing of the past. My world as a child and young adult was quite different from that of my Southern parents and grandparents. Was it perfect? No. My grandfather's casual comments on race relations made that crystal clear. And I wasn't naive enough, even as a child, to believe Grandpa was the only one to think the way he did. Still growing up and well into my adulthood, for the most part, people kept their bigotry behind closed doors. Or if they did let it out, they spoke in dog whistles, which let their audience know exactly where the speaker stood without saying the quiet, ugly parts out loud. I think a lot of racism was tacitly tolerated as long as the ugly parts remained unsaid, just out of plain sight. Then, in 2015, a certain populist politician who shall remain nameless, announced he was running for president of the United States. And as he stood in front of the news media, he launched his campaign by calling for a ban on Muslim immigrations and the building of a wall between the United States border and Mexico. He followed up that call with comments saying the Mexicans crossing our border were a bunch of rapists and drug dealers who were destroying the nation. Shocking stuff, really, at the time. In earlier election cycles, such statements would have been electoral suicide. Campaigns have been ruined by much, much less. But times had apparently changed, and those statements didn't hurt him with his voters. In fact, it was because of these racist statements, and not in spite of them, this politician was rewarded with the highest elected office in the nation. The 2016 election changed our national discourse and the parameters of what could be said in public without any real negative repercussions. People have become emboldened to speak what had previously remained unspoken. They now feel free to say the quiet parts out loud, especially on social media. A few weeks ago, in some downtime, I was on what was then known as Twitter. Big mistake. And in my feed was a random comment Twitter's algorithm decided I needed to see. Still not sure why that is. That day, President Biden had just signed a proclamation to establish a national memorial to honor civil rights martyr Emmett Till. And in response to this proclamation, a person tweeted out into the digital universe, "I didn't know who Emmett Till was until I looked him up on Wikipedia. I don't see what the big deal was." The responses that followed were even more offensive, if that was possible. You may recall that in 1955, Emmett Till was a young African-American child of 14 from Chicago who was going to visit relatives in Mississippi. Now, before leaving home, his mother had warned him that things were different in the Deep South, that he needed to watch what he said and did there, to which Emmett responded that he understood where he was going and what that meant. But in the Jim Crow South, that understanding didn't offer him any protection. 4 days after Emmett's arrival in Mississippi, he was killed by white vigilantes. His crime, allegedly flirting with a young white woman who ran the local grocery store. For this violation of the South's social code, a white mob descended upon the home where he was staying and kidnapped him. They took this child away, then beat and mutilated him before shooting him in the head and dumping his body in the Tallahatchie River. The two main vigilantes were identified, arrested, and tried for murder, but were cleared by an all-white jury. Freed from retrial by double jeopardy, the men later admitted their guilt and sold their story to Look magazine in exchange for what today would be about $43,000. Ultimately, the young white woman involved admitted the flirtation that led to Emmett's lynching never happened. It's a complete fabrication. The belief voiced on Twitter that morning that Emmett Till's murder was no big deal was likely a common sentiment among Southern whites in 1955. And it's disquieting to remember what people like my grandfather thought in 1955, and in his case, throughout his entire life. It's not shocking that some people still feel that way. It's still shocking, at least to me, however, that racists now feel to vent their most reprehensible thoughts in a public forum. It's shocking that Twitter would allow them to do so without any consequence. But I shouldn't be surprised, and maybe I'm actually not. News pundits like Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson nightly paint a picture of an American landscape torn asunder by Antifa and the Black Lives Matter movement. They show their viewers stock footage of inner cities burning and decry the destruction of property rather by trying to examine the underlying reasons and causes behind the protests. White vigilantes like Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed 2 Black Lives Matter protesters in Wisconsin, are held up as heroes, heroes who enforce the social order when law enforcement either can't or won't. Black victims like George Floyd, who was murdered by the police during his arrest for a nonviolent offense, somehow had it coming. People like that always find a reason to say the victims had it coming. And so it goes. Following the news, at least for me, has become hazardous for my mental health. If you care about the environment, the planet is burning before your eyes. Just look at the tragedy unfolding in Maui. Yet many people still maintain global warming is a hoax. If you care about racial justice and voting rights, certain people want to drag the country back to the 1950s, when the right people, fill in whatever blank you want with that one, were in control and everyone else knew their place. If you care about economic justice, economic disparity between the richest and poorest is worse now than at any time since 1929 and the start of the Great Depression. The bad news is a never-ending onslaught. So what do you do? What do you do? Now, if you're like me, you get angry. You get irate. Like the news anchor in the movie Network, you go to the window, raise the sash, and yell into the void, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." If you're a Unitarian, you take that anger and use it as motivation to be an agent of change. You show up. You get involved. You donate money to causes. You sign the petitions. You attend the marches and the political town halls. You write letters to your representatives and demand action, even if it sometimes seems hopeless that they will do anything. And the good news is, if you're a member or friend of UUFR, you're surrounded by many like-minded friends to help multiply your efforts. And that's a beautiful thing. But therein lies the root of a problem that in my mind is a dangerous one, maybe the most dangerous one. Over the past years, we've become siloed in our friendships and associations. Our friends are like-minded people who mirror our beliefs. Our social media feeds are filled with angry, embittered posts that confirm our biases and inflame our hearts and minds. We don't hear alternative opinions, and if by some miracle we do, we dismiss them out of hand. We talk to friends and acquaintances and nod our heads together in frustration and self-righteous anger. And we rage against the others that are ruining our country and indeed the world. Our rage escalates into a firestorm of fury, and we slowly begin to hate. We hate those we hold responsible for causing the suffering that surrounds us, and we hate those who enable it. I have to admit, I'm guilty of this. I often walk with a dear friend, and we spend most of our time together rehashing the latest talking points on MSNBC. Our political opinions align perfectly, and we always agree on what's wrong with the world and who's to blame. Blame being the operative word. We could fix the world if only people would do what we say, but of course they don't. We enjoy our walks, but the only things we really accomplish are getting in our steps, which is, let's be honest, a great thing, and goading each other to greater anger and self-righteousness. When I was younger, I actually had conservative friends. In college, my girlfriend came from a Republican family with some serious political connections. Her dad knew then Representative Dick Cheney, and through him, Erica finagled tickets to George H.W. Bush's inauguration in 1989. And I was there that bitter January morning to watch Bush Sr. take his oath in office and hear that glorious speech about us all being 1,000 points of light. That night, Erica and I attended the young person's inaugural ball, where we drank and danced and celebrated democracy. Like my very, 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 very liberal college friends, I had voted for Michael Dukakis that past November. And I was kind of not happy that Bush had won. 4 more years of Reaganomics didn't sound appealing. But I had fun that day, and it remains a good memory. Today, I can't imagine going to the inauguration of a Republican president, even if given the chance. I think I'd rather have a root canal. And at least with a root canal, they give you something to numb the pain and discomfort. And my conservative friends, and maybe this is the important part, have fallen one by one away from my life as political and philosophical differences have become not just differences, but questions of conscience and morality. If you don't agree with us, you're by definition a bad person. It's end of story. We forget that the others we vilify and hate in our self-righteous anger are like us, children of the universe, children of God and deserving of love. I'm not a theologian. I'm certainly not a Buddhist, and I don't even get to say I play one on TV. But I agree with what the Buddha taught 25 centuries ago when he called hatred a poison of the mind, a poison that's easy to feel, addictive, but highly toxic, corrosive, and highly destructive to both the hater and the hated. It destroys our hearts. It dehumanizes all it touches. I know this well from personal experience outside of the realm of politics and social justice. My relationship with my father has been, at best, contentious. As I grew up, we didn't argue much, and there was no family violence as such. But there was emotional neglect. Starting in my late teen years, I began compiling a list of grievances of how he had wronged my mother and me. And throughout my life, I tended that list like a gardener tends their flower beds. And like a gardener with prized flowers, I was always willing to show off my grievances whenever I could to whoever was willing to listen. I was bitter and angry and secretly seething every time I had to deal with him, which I tried to make as little as possible. Then one day I realized that perhaps, just perhaps, Dad wasn't being intentionally malicious. Perhaps he was simply incapable of giving me what I desperately needed. Perhaps he was just a deeply flawed human like the rest of us, trying to do the best he could. Often failing. Depending on the day, I might say usually failing. But sometimes succeeding. And through that realization, I was able to give him grace, really for the first time in my life. To start letting my anger and resentment toward him go. And I began to concentrate more of the things he did right as a parent. And there were some things he did right. My relationship with him started to improve, and this is the important part. The burden I carried by hating him began to lessen. By letting go my anger and bitterness, I became healthier and happier. It's said that true forgiveness requires those in the wrong to apologize and have contrition for their actions. God knows we, the aggrieved, want that satisfaction. And sometimes we get it. But sometimes, like my dad, those who hurt us don't even realize they've injured us. So why then should we expect them to apologize? Sometimes those that hurt us know and simply don't care. They don't want forgiveness at all, and may be offended if you offer it to them. I'm here to tell you all of that is okay. True forgiveness, which is a very, very different concept from reconciliation, has nothing to do with the person you're forgiving. It's about you. Let me repeat that. It's about you. Forgiveness is about making your journey through life on this planet easier. It's about putting down the poison, the anger and hatred you're carrying, and healing. It's about ending your suffering, not theirs. It's about taking back your power. It's about healing your soul. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourselves, no thanks. No thanks, I'll take a hard pass. Why should I forgive when so much of what I see in this nation seems unforgivable? And you're not wrong, much of it is. What happened to Emmett Till in 1955 is unforgivable. Sadly, man's inhumanity to man knows no limits. But just remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Forgiveness does not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. When you see injustice in the world, forgiveness doesn't mean you don't get angry. Get angry, even irate if you must. But convert that anger to productive energy. Get motivated. Become a social justice warrior. Be the change. But let the bitterness and hatred go if you can. It's killing you, whether you realize it or not. It's killing all of us. If we're going to make the positive and lasting systemic changes necessary to make the world a better place for us all, we must get out of our hardened silos. We have to reach out and have real dialogue with those with whom we disagree. We have to be able to talk to others in a way that recognizes their basic humanity, in a way that recognizes that we are all human beings who've been hurt, and our actions are often in response to that hurt. You don't get buy-in for change by approaching people with anger and hatred. Let me ask you this. When was the last time someone approached you in anger and bitterness and produced a good result? I'm guessing the answer is never. To paraphrase Dr. King, without forgiveness, the evil act which generated the animosity and hatred remains a barrier to change. Forgiveness is the change that makes that new beginning possible. Is it easy to forgive? I've never found it to be. It may be the right thing to do, but it's a hard, deliberate choice. Often, it's a daily choice. Sometimes it feels like an impossible choice. I see the wrongs committed in the world, and my gut reaction is to lash out with anger and to lash out with hatred. To hate those I deem responsible. To hate the other. And believe me, I can do that very, very well. But I try to forgive, even if it often requires continual effort. I choose forgiveness out of selfishness. It lessens my suffering. I do it because, like I've said, I think it creates a path forward towards making this nation and world a better place for others. I don't see how that's possible without it. As I wrap up, remember this. The path of radical forgiveness is not for the weak, even if people might see it as such. It takes strength and courage to turn the other cheek, to go against our natural instinct to pay back evil with evil, injury with injury. Forgiveness cannot change the past. We can't bring back Emmett Till and give him the future that was taken from him in 1955. But perhaps, just perhaps, if we forgive, we can create a future where injustice is a thing of the past. We can at least try. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you. Will you please stand in body or spirit for our closing hymn? Our closing hymn this morning is number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Thank you. Be seated. As we end this time of worship together, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more gratitude for this precious gift of life we share this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts, and with ever more hope for our own lives and the world we share. Amen.